A mother's dream, a daughter's fear. Maya Jackson sat quietly in the back row of the grand church, her fingers twisting anxiously in her lap. The ornate stained glass windows bathed the sanctuary in hues of gold, crimson, and sapphire, casting a kaleidoscope of colors on the polished wooden pews. But the breathtaking beauty of the place did little to soothe the turmoil in her heart. Today was supposed to be a joyous occasion, yet Maya felt as if a storm cloud hung over her. At the altar, her mother, Denise, was radiant in a flowing white gown that hugged her figure gracefully. Her laughter rang softly as she adjusted her veil with the help of her bridesmaids. It was a sound that used to fill their tiny home with warmth and love, but in recent months it had become rare. Maya couldn't shake the heavy pit of unease in her stomach as her gaze flickered to the man standing at the altar, the man her mother was about to marry. Richard Tate. He was handsome in his tailored tuxedo, his salt and pepper hair slicked back, and his charming smile disarming to those who didn't know better. To everyone else in the room, he was the perfect man, wealthy, confident, and charismatic. But to Maya, he was a man with a dark secret, one she couldn't let her mother remain blind to. The memories of how Richard came into their lives played like a film in her mind. Her mom had been single for years, struggling to raise Maya alone. Denise worked 2 jobs, barely scraping by, yet never failing to make Maya feel loved and cared for. When Richard appeared, it was like a fairy tale. He swept Denise off her feet with flowers, candlelit dinners, and promises of a life they'd only dreamed of. At first, Maya had been thrilled for her mom. Denise deserved happiness after years of sacrifice. But happiness came at a cost. Maya started noticing subtle changes in her mother. The vibrant woman who used to sing while making breakfast or dance with Maya in the living room became subdued. She began consulting Richard about every decision, no matter how small, and started pulling away from friends and family. The worst came on a night when Maya overheard shouting from the living room. Richard's deep voice was harsh, cutting through the walls. When Maya peeked out, she saw her mother wiping tears from her cheeks, brushing it off as just a misunderstanding when Maya asked. That was the moment Maya decided to dig deeper. Using the family computer, Maya searched for Richard's name late at night while her mom slept. What she uncovered made her blood run cold. Police reports, restraining orders, and accusations from multiple women painted a horrifying picture of a man with a history of control, manipulation, and violence. One woman claimed he had nearly strangled her during an argument. Another spoke of threats that left her terrified to leave her home. The documents were old, dating back years, but the pattern was undeniable. Maya's breath caught in her throat as she read and reread the reports. Could this really be the same man who brought flowers to their door every Friday? The same man who held her mother's hand so tenderly at the dinner table? Her mind raced as the wedding date loomed closer, every fiber of her being screamed to tell her mom, but fear of being dismissed, or worse, hurting Denise, kept her quiet. Maya tried dropping hints, asking her mom why she thought Richard avoided talking about his past, but Denise brushed it off with a laugh. Everyone has skeletons in their closet, sweetheart, she said. What matters is who they are now. But Maya couldn't let it go. She began keeping a closer watch on Richard, noting every odd behavior, every slip of his facade. Late one evening, she overheard him on the phone, speaking in a low, menacing tone. He didn't notice her crouched in the hallway as he hissed, "If you breathe a word about me, I'll make sure you regret it. Do you understand?" Maya's heart pounded in her chest, the words embedding themselves in her mind. That night, she made a decision. She would confront her mom before the wedding. But now, sitting in the church as the ceremony began, she realized time had run out. The organ swelled, and all eyes turned to Denise as she began her walk down the aisle. Maya watched, frozen in her seat. Her mother looked ethereal, her smile wide and hopeful. The guests murmured in admiration, but to Maya, it felt like watching someone step off a cliff blindfolded. Richard turned to greet Denise with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, and Maya's heart pounded in her chest. The ceremony began, the pastor's words washing over her in a blur. She clenched her fists, her mind screaming at her to act. Her mom's happiness was on the line, but so was her safety. When the pastor asked Richard to recite his vows, Maya couldn't take it anymore. She shot up from her seat, her voice trembling but loud enough to echo through the silent church. "Stop, you can't marry him." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Denise turned, her veil swaying slightly as confusion and worry clouded her face. "Maya," she asked, her voice trembling. "What's going on?" Maya swallowed hard, her legs feeling like jelly beneath her. She took a deep breath, forcing her words to come out steady. "Mom, I need to tell you something. Richard isn't who you think he is." The congregation erupted into whispers, and Richard's face darkened, his smile vanishing. "What is this nonsense?" he snapped, his voice icy. "Maya, sit down." But Maya didn't move. She reached into her bag and pulled out the folder of evidence she had painstakingly gathered. "I found these," she said, her voice growing stronger as she held the papers aloft. "Police reports, restraining orders. Richard has hurt people before, and he'll hurt you too." Denise's face paled, her hands trembling as she turned to Richard. "Is this true?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Richard's expression twisted into one of anger and desperation. "This is ridiculous," he said, his voice rising. "She's a child. She doesn't know what she's talking about." Maya's fingers fumbled as she pulled out her phone. "I also recorded him threatening someone on the phone," she said, pressing play. Richard's voice filled the church, cold and menacing. "If you tell anyone about what happened, you'll regret it." The room fell into stunned silence. Richard lunged toward her, but several guests intervened, holding him back. Denise stood frozen, her world unraveling before her eyes. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she looked at her daughter, then at Richard, and finally at the pastor who held the damning documents in trembling hands. Maya stepped closer to her mother, her voice soft but resolute. "Mom, I love you. I couldn't let you marry him without knowing the truth." Denise's shoulders shook as she turned to Richard one last time. "Is it true?" she demanded, her voice breaking. "Answer me." Richard said nothing, his silence more damning than any words. Denise's tears fell freely as she turned to the pastor. "Stop the wedding," she said, her voice trembling but firm. And with those words, the church erupted into chaos. Maya felt relief wash over her, but it was tempered by the knowledge that this was only the beginning. Richard's secrets were out, but the battle was far from over. As Denise clung to her daughter, the sound of sirens in the distance signaled that their lives were about to change forever. Secrets in the shadows. The sirens blared louder as the tension in the church reached a breaking point. 2 police officers stepped inside, their presence commanding immediate attention. The guests fell silent, their whispers dying down as Officer Harper, a composed woman with a firm but kind demeanor, and her partner, Officer Ellis, surveyed the scene. Maya clutched her mother's hand tightly, feeling the weight of the moment settle on her chest. Denise, still trembling in her wedding dress, stepped forward hesitantly, her eyes red from tears. "I called," she said, her voice cracking. "There's evidence that my fiancé has a history of violence." Her words were almost inaudible, but the officers nodded, their expressions growing serious. Richard stood near the altar, his face a mask of simmering rage. "This is absurd," he shouted, his voice booming in the high-ceilinged church. "You're going to believe the accusations of a child and a scorned woman. This is a witch hunt." Officer Harper raised a hand, her voice calm but authoritative. "Sir, we're here to assess the situation. Please lower your voice and cooperate." Maya took a deep breath, her fingers trembling as she handed the folder of evidence to Officer Harper. "I gathered this," she said softly. "It includes police reports, restraining orders, and I also have a recording of him making threats." Officer Harper flipped through the papers, her brow furrowing. She glanced at Officer Ellis, who nodded subtly. "Miss," she said to Denise, "would you like us to review this further at the station? We can't make an arrest here without confirmation, but this evidence warrants an investigation." Denise nodded, her hands gripping Maya's shoulders as if drawing strength from her daughter. "Yes," she said shakily, "please." Richard scoffed, crossing his arms. "This is outrageous. You're going to ruin my reputation over baseless claims. This girl has been jealous of me from the start." Maya felt a spark of anger rise within her. "Jealous," she snapped, her voice steady despite the quiver in her chest. "I'd never be jealous of someone who manipulates and hurts people." Officer Ellis stepped forward, addressing Richard. "Sir, we're not here to debate. We'll need you to come with us to answer a few questions." Richard hesitated for a moment, his eyes darting between the officers, Denise, and the guests who were now murmuring amongst themselves. Finally, he forced a tight-lipped smile. "Fine," he said, his tone clipped. "But this is a waste of time." As the officers escorted Richard out of the church, a sense of relief washed over Maya, but it was short-lived. She could see the worry etched deeply into her mother's face, and the murmurs from the crowd reminded her that this was far from over. The guests had scattered into small groups, some whispering in disbelief, while others exchanged judgmental glances. Denise turned to the pastor, her voice shaking but resolute. "I'm sorry for what happened today," she said, "but I couldn't let this wedding continue under these circumstances." The pastor nodded solemnly. "You did what you had to do," he said. "If there's anything the church can do to support you, please let me know." As Denise and Maya began to make their way out of the church, they were intercepted by Eleanor Tate, Richard's mother. Eleanor was impeccably dressed in a navy blue ensemble that screamed wealth and power. Her icy demeanor made the temperature in the room seem to drop. "Denise," Eleanor began, her voice dripping with forced concern, "I trust you understand the gravity of what you've done here today. Humiliating my son in front of all these people. This will not be forgotten." Denise stiffened, her back straightening. "Eleanor," she said firmly, "this isn't about humiliation. It's about protecting myself and my daughter." Eleanor's cold smile didn't falter. "Protecting yourself from what exactly?" "A loving man who has done nothing but provide for you and Maya. You've destroyed his reputation with these baseless accusations." Maya stepped forward, her voice strong despite the fear bubbling beneath the surface. "They're not baseless," she said. "We have proof." Eleanor's smile vanished, replaced by a look of calculated menace. "Proof," she sneered. "Do you think a few old papers and a doctored recording will hold up against my family's influence? You've made a grave mistake, little girl." Denise placed a protective arm around Maya, glaring at Eleanor. "Enough," she said. "Threatening us won't change the truth." Eleanor's expression softened into mock pity. "Denise dear," she said, leaning in slightly, "you're playing a dangerous game. My son may be gone for now, but I assure you, my family will not let this go unchallenged. Watch your step." With that, Eleanor turned and walked away, her heels kicking sharply against the marble floor. Maya felt a shiver run down her spine as she watched the powerful woman disappear into the crowd. Back at home, the reality of the situation began to sink in. Their modest house, once a place of comfort, now felt like a fragile shelter against a storm they couldn't predict. Denise sat on the couch, still in her wedding dress, staring blankly at the coffee table. Maya sat beside her, unsure of what to say. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Finally, Denise spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was so blind," she said, tears streaming down her face. "How could I not see who he really was?" Maya placed a hand on her mother's arm. "Mom, this isn't your fault," she said gently. "He fooled everyone, but we did the right thing by stopping the wedding." Denise nodded, though her expression remained haunted. I feel like I've lost everything," she said. "The life I thought I was going to have, the happiness I thought I found, it's all gone." Maya's heart ached for her mother. "We still have each other," she said, "and we'll get through this together. I promise." But deep down, Maya couldn't shake the feeling of dread. Eleanor's threats echoed in her mind, and she knew that the Tate family wasn't going to back down easily. They had exposed Richard, but they had also painted a target on their backs. That night, as Maya lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her mind raced with worry. What would Eleanor do? Would the police be able to hold Richard accountable? And how would they rebuild their lives after everything that had happened? As the hours dragged on, Maya finally drifted into an uneasy sleep. But even in her dreams, she couldn't escape the shadow of the Tates. They were a family used to getting what they wanted, and Maya knew they wouldn't let this go without a fight. What Maya didn't know was that the fight was coming sooner than she expected, and it would test her and her mother in ways they could never have imagined. The cost of truth. The morning after the wedding that never was, the Jackson household was eerily quiet. Denise sat at the kitchen table, still wearing the remnants of her once pristine wedding dress, now wrinkled and stained with tears. The untouched breakfast Maya had made sat between them, the smell of pancakes and coffee doing little to lift the oppressive weight of the previous day's events. Maya sat across from her mother, nursing a glass of orange juice she couldn't bring herself to drink. She studied Denise's face, noticing the shadows under her eyes and the way her hands trembled slightly as she traced the rim of her coffee mug. Maya wanted to say something, anything, to break the silence, but the words stuck in her throat. Finally, Denise spoke, her voice hoarse and weary. "Do you think I'm a fool, Maya?" she asked, her gaze fixed on the table. Maya's heart ached at the vulnerability in her mother's voice. "No, Mom," she said softly. "You're not a fool. You just wanted to believe in something good." Denise nodded, but her expression remained haunted. "I should have listened to you sooner," she whispered. "You were trying to warn me, and I ignored you." Maya reached across the table and took her mother's hand. "You couldn't have known, Mom. Richard was. He's a master at hiding who he really is. But now we know the truth, and we're safe." Denise gave a weak smile, but Maya could see the doubt in her eyes. The truth was, neither of them felt safe. Not after Eleanor Tate's threats. The Tates were powerful, with deep connections in their small town. Richard might have been taken away by the police, but his family wasn't going to let this blow to their reputation go unanswered. The sound of a car pulling up outside made them both jump. Maya's stomach twisted as she glanced out the window. A sleek black car she didn't recognize was parked in front of their house. The tinted windows gave no clue as to who was inside, but Maya had a sinking feeling she already knew. Denise stood, her posture stiff. "Stay here," she said, her voice firm despite the fear in her eyes. "Mom, no," Maya protested, rising to her feet. "You don't know who that is." Denise shook her head. "I can't let them intimidate us, Maya. We did nothing wrong." Before Maya could argue further, Denise opened the front door. Maya followed close behind, her heart pounding as a man stepped out of the car. He was tall and impeccably dressed, his dark suit tailored perfectly to his athletic frame. His expression was calm, almost pleasant, but there was something cold in his eyes that set Maya on edge. "Mrs. Jackson," the man said smoothly, his voice low and even. "I'm here on behalf of Eleanor Tate." Denise's jaw tightened. "What do you want?" The man smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm simply here to offer a suggestion," he said. "You see, the Tates are a proud family, and yesterday's events were, let's say, unfortunate. Eleanor would like to see this matter resolved quietly." Denise crossed her arms, her expression hardening. "Resolved quietly? Are you saying we should pretend none of this happened?" The man's smile widened. "Precisely. If you retract the accusations against Richard, Eleanor is willing to be generous. She'll ensure your financial stability, pay for Maya's college education, and even help you relocate to a better neighborhood. All you have to do is sign a statement saying the accusations were a misunderstanding." Maya felt a surge of anger rise within her. "You think you can buy us off?" she snapped. After everything Richard's done, the man turned his gaze to Maya, his eyes narrowing slightly. I'd advise you to think carefully, young lady. The Tates are offering you a way out. If you refuse, things could become difficult for you. Denise stepped in front of Maya, her voice shaking with anger. Is that a threat? The man's expression remained calm, but his tone turned icy. It's a reality. Eleanor Tate doesn't take kindly to public humiliation, and she has the means to make life very uncomfortable for anyone who crosses her. Denise's hands clenched into fists. Get off my property, she said, her voice low and steady. The man studied her for a moment, then inclined his head slightly. As you wish, he said, but think about what I said. This is the last olive branch you'll receive. As the man got back into his car and drove away, Denise closed the door with trembling hands. She leaned against it, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Mom, Maya said, placing a hand on her arm. Are you okay? Denise nodded, but her expression was distant. They're not going to stop, she said quietly. They'll keep coming until we give in or they destroy us. Maya felt a pang of guilt. She had been so focused on exposing Richard that she hadn't fully considered the fallout. But even as fear gnawed at her, she knew they couldn't back down. Richard had to face justice, no matter the cost. That evening, Denise received a call from Officer Harper. Mrs. Jackson, the officer said, her tone serious. We've been looking into the evidence your daughter provided, and it's compelling. However, Richard's family has hired a top-tier legal team. They're already claiming the recording was fabricated, and the police reports are irrelevant due to their age. Denise felt a wave of despair wash over her. So, what does that mean? Officer Harper sighed. It means this won't be an easy fight. The Tates have resources we can't compete with. But don't lose hope. If there's anything else you can provide, anything at all, it could make a difference. After the call ended, Denise and Maya sat in the living room, the weight of the situation pressing down on them. We need more evidence, Maya said, determination flickering in her eyes. Something they can't deny. Denise looked at her daughter, her heart swelling with pride and worry. Maya, we've already risked so much. I don't want you getting hurt. Maya shook her head. Mom, we can't let them win. There has to be someone out there who knows more about Richard, someone who can help us. Denise hesitated, then nodded. We'll figure it out, she said. Together. The next morning, Maya began her search. She spent hours combing through online forums, social media pages, and news archives, hoping to find someone connected to Richard's past. Finally, she stumbled across a name she recognized from one of the police reports. Angela Carter, one of Richard's ex-girlfriends. Maya hesitated, her finger hovering over the keyboard. Reaching out to Angela felt like a long shot, but it was their best chance. Taking a deep breath, she sent a message explaining the situation and asking if Angela would be willing to talk. Hours passed with no response. Maya's hope began to wane, but just as she was about to give up, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was a reply from Angela. I've been waiting for this day, the message read. Meet me tomorrow at 3 p.m. I'll tell you everything. The next day, Maya and Denise drove to a small cafe on the outskirts of town. Angela was already there, sitting in a corner booth. She was a petite woman with sharp features and eyes that held years of pain. As Maya and Denise approached, she stood and extended a hand. You're brave to take on the Tates, Angela said, her voice tinged with both admiration and caution. But you'll need more than bravery to bring them down. Denise nodded. We need the truth, whatever you can tell us. Angela glanced around, her expression wary. The truth is, Richard's done a lot worse than what's in those reports, and his family has been covering for him for years. But I kept something they don't know about. If you're willing to take the risk, I'll share it with you. Maya's heart raced as she leaned in. What is it? Angela took a deep breath. Proof, she said. Proof that Richard's crimes go far deeper than anyone realizes. But if you use it, be prepared. The Tates will come after you with everything they've got. Maya and Denise exchanged a glance, the weight of Angela's words sinking in. They had a choice to make: walk away and try to rebuild their lives, or take the fight to the Tates and risk losing everything. The fight for justice. Angela leaned closer, her voice a near whisper despite the quiet hum of the cafe. Her eyes darted around nervously, as though she expected someone to burst in and stop her at any moment. Maya and Denise could feel the weight of her hesitation, but they knew this was their only chance to uncover the truth. "I've kept this for years," Angela began, pulling a small battered USB drive from her pocket and placing it on the table. "This has everything: documents, emails, audio recordings, proof of what Richard and, more importantly, his family have been covering up for decades." Maya stared at the USB, her heart racing. "Why haven't you turned this over to the police before?" Angela sighed, her fingers trembling as she pushed a strand of hair behind her ear. "I was scared," she admitted. "The Tates have power, connections, money. I didn't stand a chance against them on my own. I barely escaped with my life when I tried to leave Richard. After that, I went into hiding." Denise placed a comforting hand on Angela's arm. "You're not alone anymore. We'll take this evidence and make sure it sees the light of day." Angela hesitated, her gaze locking onto Denise's. "Once you do, there's no going back. The Tates don't play fair. They'll come after you, your jobs, your reputation, your family. Are you ready for that?" Denise glanced at Maya, her resolve hardening. "We've already lost too much because of them. It's time they're held accountable." Angela nodded, a flicker of admiration crossing her face. "Then you'll need to be smart. This isn't just about Richard. The Tates have been involved in illegal activities for years: money laundering, bribery, and covering up crimes. Richard is just one piece of the puzzle." Maya felt a chill run down her spine. This was bigger than she had imagined. How do we prove all of this without getting crushed in the process? Angela leaned back, her expression serious. "You'll need to take this to someone who can't be bought: a journalist, a lawyer with integrity, someone who won't back down even when the Tates push back." Denise reached for the USB, her hands steady despite the fear in her eyes. "We'll find someone. Thank you, Angela, for your bravery." Angela gave a small, sad smile. "Just promise me you'll be careful. The Tates have destroyed people for far less." That night, back at home, Maya and Denise sat at the kitchen table, the USB drive resting between them like a loaded gun. The weight of what it contained pressed down on them, but they knew they couldn't let fear paralyze them. Denise exhaled slowly. "We need to find someone who can handle this, someone who won't be intimidated by the Tates." Maya nodded. "What about the local news station? They've exposed corruption before." Denise shook her head. "The Tates likely have connections there. We need someone from outside the town, someone who doesn't owe them any favors." Maya's eyes lit up. "I remember seeing an investigative journalist on social media, Amanda Cross. She's based in the city and has taken down powerful people before. If anyone can handle this, it's her." Denise hesitated. "Do you think she'd even respond to us?" "It's worth a try," Maya said, already pulling out her laptop. She quickly typed out an email, explaining their situation and attaching copies of the police reports and a summary of what Angela had told them. The USB drive, however, stayed in their possession for now. They couldn't risk it being intercepted. After sending the email, they sat in silence, the enormity of their actions sinking in. Every creak of the house, every shadow outside the window made them jump. They knew Eleanor Tate wouldn't back down without a fight. The next morning, Maya's phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from Amanda Cross. Maya's heart leaped as she read the message aloud. "Dear Maya, I've reviewed your email and the attached documents. If what you're saying is true, this could be one of the biggest stories of my career. I'd like to meet you and your mother to discuss this further. Let's set up a time." Denise leaned back in her chair, a mixture of relief and anxiety on her face. "This is it," she said. "Our chance to bring them down." Maya nodded, determination burning in her chest. "We need to be careful, though. If the Tates catch wind of this, they'll try to stop us." 2 days later, Maya and Denise met Amanda at a neutral location, a quiet cafe in the city. Amanda was a striking woman in her early 40s, her sharp eyes betraying a fierce intelligence. She listened intently as they recounted their story, occasionally taking notes in a leather-bound notebook. When Denise handed over the USB, Amanda's expression turned grim. "If what's on here is as incriminating as you say, the Tates will stop at nothing to discredit you. Are you prepared for that?" Denise nodded. "We've been through enough. It's time someone stood up to them." Amanda smiled faintly. "You're braver than most people I've met. I'll start digging into this right away, but I'll need you to be ready for backlash. Once this story breaks, they'll come after you with everything they've got." The next week passed in a blur. Amanda kept them updated on her progress, confirming that the evidence on the USB was damning. Emails detailed Richard's involvement in a series of illegal business deals, while recordings implicated Eleanor and other members of the Tate family in covering up crimes. But as Amanda worked, the Tates began to retaliate. Denise received notice from her employer that her position was being re-evaluated. Maya's college application, which had been accepted with a scholarship, was suddenly under review. Anonymous threats started arriving in their mailbox, warning them to back off. One evening, as Denise and Maya sat in their living room, the phone rang. Denise hesitated before answering, her hand trembling slightly. "Hello," she said cautiously. A cold, familiar voice came through the line. "Denise, this is Eleanor." Denise's stomach dropped, but she forced herself to remain calm. "What do you want?" Eleanor's tone was icy. "I warned you what would happen if you crossed us. If you think your little journalist friend can protect you, you're sorely mistaken. Walk away now, and maybe I'll consider letting you and your daughter keep what's left of your lives." Denise's grip tightened on the phone. "We're not afraid of you, Eleanor. The truth is coming out, whether you like it or not." Eleanor laughed, the sound chilling. "Brave words, Denise. But bravery won't save you when the walls come crashing down." Denise hung up, her hands shaking. Maya placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Mom, we can't let her scare us. We're doing the right thing." Denise nodded, though her fear was palpable. "I know," she said, "but we need to be ready for whatever comes next." A week later, Amanda's story broke. The headline read, "Family Dynasty Exposed, the Dark Secrets of the Tates." The article detailed Richard's history of abuse, the Tates' illegal dealings, and their attempts to silence anyone who dared oppose them. The story spread like wildfire, drawing national attention. Social media erupted with outrage, and calls for justice flooded in from across the country. But the Tates didn't go down quietly. Within hours of the article's release, Maya and Denise's house was vandalized. Threatening messages were spray-painted on their walls, and bricks were thrown through their windows. The police were called, but it was clear that the Tates' reach extended far beyond the law. Maya and Denise knew they were in the fight of their lives. The truth was out, but the battle was far from over. Rising from the ashes, the house was a wreck. Shattered glass crunched underfoot as Maya helped her mother sweep up the remnants of their living room window. The threatening messages spray-painted on the walls, phrases like "liars" and "youlpay," served as stark reminders that the Tates weren't going down without a fight. "Mom," Maya said, her voice trembling as she picked up a brick with a note tied to it, "They won't stop." Denise took the note from Maya, her fingers brushing against her daughter's trembling hand. The message was brief but chilling. "You've made the biggest mistake of your life. Stop, or it gets worse." Denise swallowed hard, her resolve hardening as she crumpled the note and tossed it into the trash. "Let them come," she said, her voice low but fierce. "They're trying to scare us because they know they've been exposed. We won't give in." But Maya could see the strain in her mother's face, the wariness etched into her features. The fight was taking its toll, not just on their home, but on their spirits. For the first time, Maya wondered if they were in over their heads. The community rallies. The next morning, Denise and Maya woke to an unexpected sight. Neighbors had gathered outside their house, armed with paint, cleaning supplies, and plywood to help repair the damage. People who had read Amanda's article and heard their story were stepping up, offering their support in ways big and small. Mrs. Peterson, an elderly woman who lived down the street, handed Denise a plate of cookies as she arrived with a group of helpers. "We believe you," she said simply. "No one should have to face this alone." Maya felt a swell of hope for the first time in days. As she and her mother worked alongside their neighbors to repair their home, she realized that the Tates might have power, but they didn't have the community on their side. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, reminded Maya that they weren't fighting this battle alone. A legal storm. Despite the community's support, the Tates' legal team was relentless. Richard's lawyers filed defamation suits against both Denise and Amanda Cross, claiming the article was filled with lies. The lawsuits were designed to drain their resources, forcing them to spend money on legal fees they didn't have. Denise's job, meanwhile, officially terminated her, citing vague restructuring reasons. Maya's scholarship was revoked without explanation. The walls Eleanor Tate had promised to bring down were closing in fast. Amanda, however, was undeterred. She rallied her own legal team and connected Denise and Maya with pro bono attorneys who were willing to take on the Tates. "This is exactly what they do," Amanda explained during one of their meetings. "They intimidate, they drain your resources, and they make you feel like fighting back isn't worth it. But if you hold your ground, they'll crack." Maya listened intently, her fists clenched under the table. "What if they don't crack?" she asked. Amanda smiled faintly. "Everyone has a breaking point, Maya, even the Tates." The courtroom battle. The first court hearing was a media frenzy. Reporters swarmed the courthouse steps as Denise and Maya arrived with their attorneys. Cameras flashed and questions were shouted, but Denise held her head high, gripping Maya's hand for strength. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. Eleanor Tate sat with the high-powered legal team, her expression unreadable, but her presence intimidating. Richard was absent, still under investigation for the crimes exposed in Amanda's article. The Tates' lawyers wasted no time painting Denise and Maya as opportunists, claiming they had fabricated evidence to tarnish Richard's reputation and gain attention. They even went so far as to accuse Maya of doctoring the audio recording, presenting experts who cast doubt on its authenticity. But Amanda and her team were prepared. They countered with forensic experts who verified the authenticity of the recordings and documents. Angela Carter testified, recounting her own harrowing experiences with Richard and providing additional evidence of his abusive behavior. The turning point came when one of the Tates' former employees, a man named Greg Harmon, took the stand. Greg had worked for the family for years and had first-hand knowledge of their shady dealings. He revealed how the Tates had bribed officials, covered up crimes, and threatened anyone who dared speak out against them. "They think they're untouchable," Greg said, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "But they're not." Eleanor's composure finally cracked, her jaw tightened, and her eyes burned with fury as Greg detailed the Tates' corrupt practices. The courtroom buzzed with tension as more witnesses came forward, each one chipping away at the Tates' carefully constructed facade. The fallout. The trial lasted weeks, but in the end, the tide turned in Denise and Maya's favor. The judge dismissed the defamation suits, citing overwhelming evidence of the Tates' wrongdoing. Richard was formally charged with multiple counts of domestic abuse, and further investigations into the family's financial crimes were launched. Eleanor Tate's reputation was left in shambles. The once revered matriarch of a powerful family now faced public scrutiny and disgrace. For the first time, the Tates were on the defensive, their power diminished by the truth. Outside the courthouse, Denise and Maya were met with cheers from supporters who had followed their story. Maya felt tears sting her eyes as strangers approached to thank them for their courage. "You've inspired so many people," one woman said, holding her young daughter's hand. "What you did, it gave us hope." Denise hugged Maya tightly, her voice choked with emotion. "We did it," she whispered. "We stood up to them, and we won." A new beginning. Life didn't return to normal immediately. The road to recovery was long, and the scars from their battle with the Tates lingered. But with the support of their community, Denise found a new job, and Maya's scholarship was reinstated by an organization that had read about their story. Angela Carter, freed from the shadow of fear, began rebuilding her own life, grateful for the strength Denise and Maya had shown. Amanda Cross received national recognition for her work, using the platform to continue exposing corruption. As for the Tates, their empire crumbled piece by piece. Eleanor withdrew from public life, and Richard faced the consequences of his actions in a court of law. One evening, as Maya and Denise sat on their rebuilt porch, watching the sunset, Maya turned to her mother. "Do you think it was worth it?" she asked quietly. Denise smiled, her eyes reflecting both wariness and pride. "It was worth it," she said, "because we didn't let them win. We stood up for what was right, and we showed the world that even the powerful can be brought down when people have the courage to fight." Maya nodded, her heart swelling with hope. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of peace. The storm had passed, and while the battle had left its mark, it had also forged an unbreakable bond between her and her mother, a bond built on love, truth, and resilience. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they sat together in silence, ready to face whatever came next. Redemption and resilience. The days that followed the trial were surreal. Maya and Denise were adjusting to a new reality, one where the looming shadow of the Tates no longer dictated their every move. Yet, the fight had left them changed, and the journey to rebuild their lives wasn't without its challenges. Maya walked into her small bedroom one morning and sat at her desk, scrolling through the countless messages and emails flooding her inbox. People from all over the country had reached out, offering words of encouragement and admiration. Many were survivors of abuse or corruption, thanking Maya for standing up and giving them hope. Some even shared their own stories of fighting powerful forces and finding justice. She felt a pang of guilt as she read one message from a woman in Texas who had endured years of abuse from her ex-husband. "Your courage helped me see that I can fight back too," the woman wrote. Maya hadn't felt courageous throughout this ordeal. Most days, she had been terrified. But knowing her actions had inspired others gave her a new sense of purpose. Healing wounds. For Denise, the aftermath of the trial was bittersweet. Her dignity had been restored, and the truth about Richard and the Tates had been exposed, but she was still grappling with the emotional scars. The betrayal of someone she had once trusted deeply weighed heavily on her. One afternoon, as Denise worked in their small backyard garden, a therapeutic hobby she'd taken up to cope, Maya joined her, sitting cross-legged in the grass. "You're quieter than usual," Maya said, watching her mother trim the hedges. Denise sighed, wiping sweat from her brow. "I'm just reflecting, I guess. It's strange, Maya. I thought marrying Richard would be the start of a new chapter for us, a fresh beginning. But instead, it became this fight." Maya leaned forward, plucking a small weed from the soil. "Mom, you've taught me something incredible. Sometimes the toughest battles lead to the most important victories. Look at what we've accomplished. We didn't just save ourselves. We helped expose something bigger." Denise smiled faintly, sitting down beside her daughter. "I couldn't have done any of it without you. You were my rock through this, Maya. Your courage gave me the strength to keep going." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "And you were mine, Mom." They sat in the garden for a long while, the warm sun on their backs, finally allowing themselves to breathe without fear. Eleanor's last move. Despite their victory, the Tates weren't entirely done with them. One afternoon, a letter arrived at their doorstep, hand-delivered by a courier. Denise opened it cautiously, her heart sinking when she saw the Tate family crest on the letterhead. It was a message from Eleanor. ***, Denise and Maya. You may think you've won, but this is far from over. You've tarnished my family's name and taken from us something we can never recover, our reputation. You've left us exposed to ridicule and ruin. But know this, even now, I have the power to make your lives miserable. Walk away from this town, leave everything behind, and I might consider letting you live in peace. Ignore this warning, and you will regret it. ***. Denise's hands shook as she read the letter aloud. Maya clenched her fists, anger bubbling in her chest. She's still trying to scare us, Maya said, her voice sharp. We've already exposed everything. What more can she do? Denise stared at the letter, then calmly folded it and placed it on the table. Nothing, she said firmly. She's all bark now. Her empire is crumbling, and she knows it. This is desperation. Maya nodded, her mother's confidence bolstering her own. We're not running, Maya said. This is our home. Denise smiled, pride shining in her eyes. No, Maya, we're not running anymore. Finding purpose. As the weeks passed, life began to stabilize. Denise found a new job as a caseworker for a non-profit organization that helps survivors of domestic abuse. Her own experiences gave her a unique perspective, and she threw herself into the work, determined to make a difference. Maya, meanwhile, was accepted into a journalism program at a prestigious university, an opportunity that came after Amanda Cross wrote a glowing recommendation letter for her. Inspired by Amanda's fearless reporting, Maya decided she wanted to pursue a career in investigative journalism, using her voice to shine a light on injustices the way Amanda had for them. One evening, Denise and Maya sat together at the dining table, poring over brochures for Maya's upcoming college journey. The house was filled with the scent of dinner cooking in the kitchen, and for the first time in months, the atmosphere felt warm and hopeful. Are you sure you're ready for this? Denise asked, her voice tinged with both excitement and concern. Maya grinned. Mom, after everything we've been through, I feel like I can handle anything. Denise laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair from Maya's face. I'm so proud of you, sweetie. You're going to change the world. Maya's smile faltered slightly, her eyes growing serious. I just want to make sure no one else has to go through what we did. Denise reached out and squeezed her hand. You will, Maya. You already have. The Tates fall. While Denise and Maya were rebuilding their lives, the Tates' world continued to unravel. Richard was convicted of multiple counts of domestic abuse and sentenced to prison. Eleanor, once the untouchable matriarch of the family, faced mounting legal battles as her financial crimes came to light. One by one, the family's allies distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with their corruption. The media dubbed the downfall of the Tates the fall of the dynasty, and it became a cautionary tale about the abuse of power. The story wasn't just about their crimes. It was about the courage of two ordinary women who stood up to a seemingly invincible family and won. Moving forward. On the day Maya left for college, Denise stood on the front porch, waving as Maya packed the last of her things into the car. The neighbors had gathered to see her off, their smiles and well wishes filling the air with warmth. Maya hugged her mom tightly, tears brimming in her eyes. I'll call you every day, she promised. Denise chuckled. You better. And don't forget, no matter how far away you are, I'm always here for you. Maya nodded, her throat tight with emotion. I know, Mom. I wouldn't be here without you. As Maya drove away, Denise watched until the car disappeared down the road. She felt a mix of sadness and pride, knowing her daughter was embarking on a new journey, but she also felt peace. They had faced their darkest days and come out stronger on the other side. Legacy of courage. Years later, Maya would go on to become an award-winning journalist, known for her fearless reporting on corruption and injustice. Denise's nonprofit grew into a statewide organization, helping thousands of survivors find safety and support. Their story became a beacon of hope for others, a testament to the power of truth and resilience. And while they never forgot the pain of their battle with the Tates, they found strength in knowing they had stood their ground and fought for what was right. Because sometimes the hardest battles lead to the greatest triumphs. And for Denise and Maya, their victory was more than just justice. It was a new beginning.